Somebody said the quiet part out loud with the banking system. We all know it hasn't been in the healthiest spot, with banks collapsing left and right, tons of banks underwater on their assets, and the future of banking industry, the crisis that's here seems to be building every single day. But there's a video of a senator on CNBC literally saying that banks are basically just Ponzi schemes, which he's not really wrong about, because that's really what they all are, because any single bank that has enough people wanting their money back would collapse because they don't have it because of the way they operate with fractional reserve banking.
I just know the world is different now with technology and the way we can communicate so quickly. And banks exist on the basis of trust. They're really just, don't take this the wrong way, sophisticated Ponzi schemes. And they work when everybody trusts each other. And you get on that iPhone and start sending text messages, and you have the herd panic and stampede. Anybody can go broke.
The speed of transmission is completely
Absolutely, it's breathtaking.
Senator Kennedy, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your
So basically, he says that, because people can communicate so quickly now and panic out of, basic things that are deserving to be panicking over, that banks collapse because people go to move their money out of that bank. If one bank has a bad reputation that something bad's going to happen, people are going to want to move their money to a different bank, or maybe even put the money under their mattress. But it is funny to see that this is being said out loud, because it really is the way banks work, as a Ponzi scheme, because of fractional reserve banking and how they keep their reserves and make loans and all this stuff, that if enough people panic at any bank, it will be in trouble. And that trouble might be starting to brew. You can see banks have lost about $1 trillion in deposits over the last year. This is from the Fed. So he started around 2022 year, started the year kind of moving up a bit, and then a pretty big move down of $1 trillion. Now, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at this, you can see since like 2020, the bigger moves up here from like $13 trillion that banks had in the beginning of 2020 to where they are now at about 17 trillion. So it's still a ton of more money in the banks, right? It's not, the trillion is a huge amount of money to be taken out, but it is a pretty large number that the banks still have. So in terms of looking at this and saying, $1 trillion is lost to panic, I don't know if you could necessarily really say that. Like pre-pandemic levels, 13 trillion, they're at 17 trillion now. If it continues the move down, right, then you got bigger things to worry about. But I do think that the big four banks, they're going to be perfectly fine. They are already deemed too big to fail. They are not going anywhere. And the smaller commercial banks, regional banks, those are the ones in actual trouble. But all banks might actually be in trouble with things like this. You can see banks offering a 0.1% return. Money market accounts are at 4%. This isn't really complicated why banks are losing deposits. They need to raise their rates on what they pay depositors. FDIC limits are only part of the issue. So obviously the big talk, FDIC, people aren't going to put their money in here because they can go away. But the vast majority of people don't have $250,000 sitting in one bank account. So FDIC is really a problem for the self-proclaimed smartest people on the planet, businessmen, who should be able to figure out a way to get into a bank that's actually operating right. But this is true. Deposits are going down too, because people are realizing, why do I put my money in a bank that's giving me 0.1% when I can put it in maybe a high yield savings account bank that's offering 4%, higher than 4%, the money market accounts? That is where people should be saving their money. You should never be keeping your savings in a bank account that's not paying you anything. You might as well put them in high yield savings accounts earning 4% plus, and you'll be good to go. You could still take that money out if you need it. It's not like it's locked up. If you buy a bond and it's locked up for whatever time, you can still pull that money out. So there's absolutely no reason to put money in a bank that's not paying you enough to keep your money there. And that might be another thing that this senator was spot on about, because people transferring that information over the internet saying, why would you do this? You get the exact same benefits as the 0.1% here, but in a 4% account. So why wouldn't people move their money there? And I think there's a big move for this big tech type stuff. Like you can see This is competitive offers keep popping up after Apple's 4.15% deal. That's their savings account. Today, M1 announced another one. If banks don't offer better terms, they won't be able to handle what follows, which could be true. But the flip side of this too is all of these tech platforms. I don't know about M1, but I know Apple's partnered with Goldman Sachs, so they're still using that bank to do all their kind of banking features in their savings account. I'm sure M1 is partnered with some other bank, so there's still banks winning here because they're partnered with these people, these companies, and they're using their services. It's their bank doing it. But the vast majority of banks, they got to figure out how to get this, because people shouldn't keep money in their savings in a bank that's not paying them enough to keep it there. And with all of this going on, Jerome Powell just can't help himself but say that the US banking system is sound and resilient after some of the top banks collapse. And there's more money being lost right now than during 2008 banks collapsing. So yeah, I mean, if that's sound and resilient, then sure, they are doing a great job. But it is very crazy to see somebody, a senator, going on TV and literally saying the quiet part out loud of banks operating as Ponzi schemes or sophisticated Ponzi schemes, and being terrified that because people can communicate quickly that these banks can collapse, when in reality it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter how fast people communicate. You should be running a good business. If you have a good business, you're not going to collapse. There's not enough people that can talk bad about Apple and panic people about Apple that's going to put Apple out of business. It's just not going to happen. The only industry that this can happen to is banks, because of the way they operate. So maybe it's time to actually change that, or get yourself out and just buy Bitcoin and be your own bank. That's gonna do it for this video. As always, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.